The call came at 2:47 in the afternoon. "Your father fell. He's at Memorial. You should come." Karen drove to the hospital without remembering a single traffic light. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles hurt. Every worst-case scenario lined up in her mind. Surgery, concussion, broken hip, the long, slow decline people whispered about but never named. But the thought that wouldn't leave her alone wasn't the fall itself. It was something quieter, something worse. The uneasy feeling that this hadn't started today. That whatever had happened on the kitchen floor had been happening for a long time, and she hadn't seen it. This is Stories of Connection. Today's story is about the danger of assuming everything is fine, and the moment you realize you stopped really looking at someone you love. Karen's father, Gene, had always been steady. Not loud, not dramatic, just reliable. The kind of man who fixed broken cabinet doors without being asked. Who shoveled snow before sunrise so no one else had to. Who never complained about being tired, even when he clearly was. He was 74 now, still living in the same house, still mowing the lawn, still insisting he didn't need help. Or at least, that's what Karen believed. She visited when she could, every few weeks, sometimes longer. There were kids to drive places, deadlines at work, groceries, laundry, emails that multiplied overnight. Nothing unusual, nothing irresponsible, just life. And every time she stopped by, she saw what she expected to see. Her dad. Maybe slower, maybe quieter. But aging looked like that, didn't it? Everyone slowed down eventually. Gene had fallen reaching for something on the top shelf. Lost his balance, hip against the counter, head against the floor. A neighbor heard the crash and called 911. By the time Karen arrived, he was awake and irritated. "I'm fine," he said. "Everyone's making a big deal out of nothing." But the doctor stopped her in the hallway. "Your father was lucky," he said gently. "Falls at his age usually come with warning signs." Warning signs. Karen nodded like she understood. She didn't. Not yet. That night, sitting beside his hospital bed while machines hummed softly around them, memories began arriving one after another. Not dramatic moments, small ones, the kind that barely register at the time. 6 months earlier, they'd walked to the mailbox together. A short walk. Karen remembered slowing her pace without thinking about it. Her father's steps were careful, shorter, his feet barely lifting from the ground. She remembered noticing. And then immediately explaining it away. The driveway was uneven. Anyone would be cautious. Except, her father had never been cautious. He used to stride everywhere, confident, fast. The change hadn't happened suddenly. It had crept in slowly enough to look normal. 3 months before the fall, there had been the pickle jar. He twisted the lid once, then again, his jaw tightening slightly. Finally, he handed it to her. "These companies make them impossible now," he muttered. Karen opened it easily. She laughed. He laughed. They moved on. Now, sitting beside his hospital bed, she remembered something else. It hadn't been the first jar, or the second. His handshake at Christmas had felt softer too. He'd asked her husband to carry the cooler, stop doing his own yard work. At the time, she admired him for being practical, delegating, smart. She never considered another possibility. That strength doesn't disappear all at once. It leaves politely, piece by piece. The moment that stayed with her most happened a month before the fall. She had stopped by unexpectedly, found him standing in the hallway, one hand flat against the wall, just standing there. "Dad?" He startled. "Oh, hey. You okay?" "Fine," he said quickly. "Just thinking." She accepted that answer because it was easier. Now she understood what she had interrupted. He hadn't been thinking. He had been waiting for the room to stop moving. And she had walked away. There were other things too, not physical, quieter. Her mother mentioned once that Gene wasn't sleeping. "Up half the night," she said over the phone. Karen suggested he talk to his doctor. Then she forgot about it. Not intentionally, just life. She assumed her mother would handle it, or the doctor already knew. Or maybe it wasn't serious. It's amazing how comforting assumptions can be. They let you believe someone else is paying attention. Food changed too. Jean had always eaten like a man who worked outdoors his entire life. Big plates, second helpings. But at Thanksgiving, he barely finished half. At Christmas, he pushed pot roast around his plate. Karen noticed his shirts hung looser, his face sharper. She mentioned it once. "I'm fine," he said, and she let that be the end of the conversation, because arguing would have felt like accusing him, because she didn't want to sound dramatic, because part of her didn't want to know. The last realization hurt the most. Jean used to organize everything: coffee with old co-workers, poker nights, phone calls that lasted an hour. Somewhere along the way, that stopped. Karen asked once if he still saw his friends. "Everyone's busy," he said. Later, her mother told her quietly, "They still get together. Your father just doesn't go anymore." Karen told herself he was becoming introverted. People changed. Retirement did that. She didn't think, maybe leaving the house had become hard. Maybe exhaustion wasn't personality. Maybe independence sometimes hides fear. Sitting in the hospital room, Karen understood something uncomfortable. Nothing had been hidden from her. Not really. She had seen almost everything. She just hadn't let herself connect it. Because noticing meant responsibility. Noticing meant conversations neither of them wanted. Noticing meant admitting her father was no longer the man who shoveled snow at sunrise. And she wasn't ready for that. So she chose the easier story, until the floor forced a different one. The doctor said Jean could go home in a few days. Bruised, sprained wrist, lucky. Everyone kept saying, lucky. Karen didn't feel lucky. She felt late, but not too late, and that mattered. She didn't arrive the next week with lectures or safety brochures. Jean would have thrown her out. Instead, she started visiting more often. Not hovering, just staying longer, paying attention. She noticed the porch railing wobble slightly and tightened it while he napped. Refilled light bulbs so rooms stayed bright. Asked questions differently. Not, "How are you?" that always earned, "Fine." Instead, "What did you eat today? How'd you sleep? When's the last time you saw Dr. Mitchell?" Jean grumbled, "I don't need a babysitter." "I know," she said, "but I need my dad, so humor me." He didn't argue after that. Here's the uncomfortable truth Karen learned. Our parents rarely announce when something changes. They don't call to say, "My balance feels strange," or "I get tired halfway through the grocery store now." They keep going, because that's what they've always done. And sometimes we help them keep pretending. Because seeing clearly feels like crossing a line. It feels intrusive, disrespectful, almost disloyal. But ignoring change doesn't protect independence. It only postpones the moment when choices disappear. Karen didn't become her father's caretaker. She didn't take his keys or move him into her house. She simply stopped assuming and started noticing. Sometimes love isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's just attention. The kind you give before something breaks. What's one thing you want to pay closer attention to the next time you see your parent? This is Stories of Connection. Stories about family, about time passing faster than we expect, and about the quiet moments when understanding finally catches up with us. Let's meet again next week for another story. Until then, don't wait.